Magnus Carlsen and Fabiano Caruana resume their rivalry in the final of the Clutch Chess Showdown from St. Louis, the latest high-profile online tournament. So this was a really exciting contest with both players winning games, and it came down to the final game with Caruana just needing a draw to win. Carlsen with the white pieces in a must-win situation. Let's take a look at the game. Carlsen played c4, and it came into this very trendy line at the moment that Carlsen really set off in, well, the World Championship match in 2018. He employed it against Caruana in the final. This move e4, which is a little bit unusual, before playing the bishop to g2. And in that playoff, Caruana played castles here, but lost. And here he took on c3. Now, Carlsen has recaptured with both pawns with some success. He played b takes c3, probably the more ambitious move because you want to try and establish a big center. Now, if that pawn is taken, then white can recover the pawn with queen g4 or queen e2. So castles. And here in the past, people have just played bishop g2, but f3 is really ambitious. Basically, white is just protecting that center pawn. Doesn't bother about development for the moment, but just wants to establish a huge center with d4. And well, previously in this match, well, Caruana had tried rook e8. But here he went for b5, so he's trying to counter Carlsen's dominance in the center. What he wants to do is try to exploit the fact that white's king is in the middle, and if pawn takes pawn, then black will play d5 to explode the center. Now that is really dangerous. But Carlsen just ignored that and pushed forward with his plan to play d4. So pawns exchanged and pawn takes c4. And again, a really critical moment right at the start of the game. Of course, bishop takes c4 feels like a very natural move, but then d5 will explode the center and then white's king could be in trouble. So Carlsen instead pushed on. It's incredible how many pawn moves he's made at the start of the game. Hasn't brought out any of these pieces on the back rank. Now, knight d5. Knight comes into the center. Bishop takes c4, bishop b7, protecting the knight. So black still ahead in development. So very important that Carlsen catches up. Knight h3, d6. So Caruana trying to chip away at white's center, and I'm sure with some relief, Carlsen castles kingside. The king is still pretty exposed after these pawn moves. But, well, there's no dark squared bishop, which means that white's king is relatively safe along this diagonal. Knight d7. Still feels as though black could get some initiative here. Pawn takes pawn on e5. White recaptures. Pawn takes pawn on e5. And knight to b6 attacks the bishop. Now, you don't want to give up these two bishops. They're a real asset for Carlsen here. That bishop comes back to a good square. And here, I feel that Caruana could have pressed forward. I think he has to use his slight lead in development here. I think c5 is the move to push that bishop, maybe use that c-pawn in some way and just gain some more space. Instead, he went for queen e7, which just gives Carlsen a moment to strike. So instead of, for example, developing this bishop, he pushed on with e6. Now, this is a great move. It basically wrests the initiative from black. Carlsen is going for it straight away. It's really ambitious. It's still quite risky considering the weakness on these diagonals. Well, let's see. I mean, personally, I think that, this is said with hindsight, perhaps the best move is to try and keep the position closed with f6. I mean, white still has a very promising position with the pawn on e6, but after pawn takes pawn, this definitely takes a turn for the worse for Caruana, because knight g5. It's really interesting. With only a few pieces in the game, white's attack is already incredibly strong. So you can see threat here, which of course weakens the diagonal. But not only that, there are problems on this diagonal too. So for example, if e5, then queen d3 threatens a mate, and if g6, just f4. And you can see that both these diagonals, once the bishop reaches here, that king is in desperate trouble, just being cut to shreds. So Caruana went for rook f6, protecting this pawn. It looks very awkward to put the rook here. And, well, let's see what happened. Queen c2, again, this diagonal is weak. Threatening queen takes h7 check. And if, let's say, pawn to g6, then again, bishop b2 just looks dreadful. So rook g6, a very awkward defense, blocking this diagonal. But it looks so ugly. And in fact, Carlsen exploited black's weaknesses straight away with rook takes pawn on e6, and this is absolutely deadly. So you can see if rook takes rook, let's just see that one, it's checkmate, the knight covering this square. So queen takes rook, Caruana had to give up his queen. Knight takes queen, rook takes. So now we've got a situation where black has rook and a knight against the queen. Now, in some situations, you can try and hold this. But here, with white having these incredibly powerful bishops, let's just see. Carlsen played this one, so you can see they're just raking across the board. Those laser beams. Black's king is actually in terrible trouble. And this knight, although it's well defended at the moment, you can see it just can't move because that bishop is too strong. So that really limits black's powers here. So it's very difficult for black to get some kind of counterplay. Now this is a start. Caruana looking perhaps to get down to the second rank, but actually without the support of the other pieces, it's very hard to turn this into any kind of meaningful attack. Bishop d4. Now this looks to perhaps take here and weaken black's hold, black's blocking on this diagonal. And if rook e2, in fact, queen takes pawn, you see, using that pin, the knight can't take the queen because the bishop looks down to the king, and that queen would attack, well, threatens queen takes pawn mate and also threatens the bishop. Be dreadful. So basically, because of the pressure here, Caruana just nudged the king to the side. But now Carlsen decides, right, it's time to go for the kill. He went for queen f5. If you want to checkmate your opponent's king, get your queen into the danger zone. Get it right in the king's face. So in combination with the bishops, this is deadly. The bishop drops back with some kind of latent threat, wants to move the rook, discovered attack, and take the queen. But of course, Carlsen just nudges the queen to the side, and that is starting to look really nasty. You know, he wants to just nudge that bishop back, and again, we've got that attack on the h7 square. c7, c5 played. Well, I think there are a lot of good moves here, but Carlsen just took that pawn. Caruana thrashing around, just trying to distract Carlsen, but no, that queen just hovered around, and it's protected. These squares are protected by the bishop, so that queen really can't be attacked, and that is such a nasty position. Caruana had one last desperate hope. He tried to get his bishop in. around White's king, but bishop f8, that's a beautiful move. So 2 checkmates threatened either with the bishop or the queen. There's no defense, of course. Rook takes, bishop allows, queen takes rook. So rook e1 check. I mean, this is just the last thrashing around from Caruana. King f2. In fact, the king is able to run away. King e2, knight check, king d3, and that was the final move of the game. There is simply no defense to the checkmate on the next turn. I mean, you can throw in a few random checks, but these pieces will just be taken. Carlsen really seized the moment in this final game, and so he won the Clutch Chess Showdown. And at the end, he did his trademark to hush the haters. Well, in fact, after the game, Carlsen was really magnanimous and praised Caruana, and because the final was actually very, very even, and said that, you know, he fully deserved to win. But, well, in the end, Magnus held it together right till the finale. Great stuff. Well, Magnus will be back in action in, well, not in a few days' time, in the latest Magnus Tour online tour tournament. So watch out for that. But yeah, you know, it still feels to me as though, well, Caruana is so close to Carlsen in strength, even in rapid and blitz time controls. And Caruana is not the only one snapping at Carlsen's heels. So next tournament is going to be very interesting. Thanks for watching.